Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2. Well, I think it's safe to say that the little lumber business we managed to tap into will be our cash cow for the foreseeable future, and I expected it to be so successful, that I will throw caution to the wind, and start building the Mainline in this episode. And spoiler warning, that route will be so successful for us, that we will not only manage to connect 2 towns on that main line, but 3 of them, complete with local bus lines for collecting passengers, and nice big train stations. Oh, and instead of starting out with a cautious 2-lane main line, I will immediately go for all 4 lanes right away. Hey, there she is, our little piggy bank. Let's see how we can make her life a little more profitable. But before I get to it, let's quickly fix this road bridge that I was struggling with in the last episode. I was really unsatisfied with it. I also mentioned that we could use those buttress mod with some file editing, but even with that, it still doesn't conform to the roads in any way that is visually acceptable. So let's just use the bridge itself to be presentable. For that to work, we just need to build it in 2 stages, so the 2 ends are absolutely guaranteed to be nice. That should do it. Let's quickly fix the roads leading up to it, and we can call it done. Now that's what I call a quaint little country overpass. After all that excitement, we are ready to give the Sawmill line the last remaining expansion. Basically, the trains will go from the lumber yard to the sawmill, and there they will load up on boards, which they will then take down to the tools factory, which is relatively close to the forest. This will cut down on the time they spend running empty quite a bit. But, those tunnel entrances were way too misaligned for my tastes, and I couldn't live with myself if I left it like that. We can absolutely do better. Now that's more like it. They are more or less in line with each other. To make this setup workable, we only need to add one more thing, a way for the trains to change lanes as they leave the sawmill, so other trains can start using the long line coming up from the forest. Alright, let's add the last station to the line. And that about does it for a single train setup. And we already have a tiny amount of boards ready to go. The only real problem we have right now, is that the sawmill needs 2 tons of wood to make 1 ton of boards. Which means that even if the trains bring a full load of wood to it, they will always leave with half a load of boards. The only way to make them leave with a full load of boards, is to bring in a second line of wood from somewhere else. Might do that at some point, but this is adequate for now. Anyways, time to rename some of the cities that I was unhappy with in the last episode. Bromley is now called Paddington. That's where my last workplace was before leaving London. And Soho is now called Kilburn. That was where I lived the first time. I think that was the longest living arrangement I had, took me about 3 years before I moved house. And Wandsworth is now known as Harrow. I only visited the place a couple times myself, but I did go down Harrow Road quite a few times. In fact, I think I used that road more times than any other in the entire city, including all the streets I lived in. In fact, all the houses I lived in were no more than 2 blocks away from that road. Anyways, now that the towns have their final names, we could rename the lines. For Kilburn, I decided to use the number 36. That's what I used to go home from my first workplace. I usually walked to work, but I was doing night shift, and there was no way I would walk home after midnight. As for Wembley, I just went with 245, a bus I used a couple times. I usually moved around that place via the tube, so I didn't really have a memorable bus line at the ready. Next, I decided to replace the intercity buses with the Levante 3. They have a better passenger capacity, so I sold some of them, since we don't need as many. Also, full disclosure, I did change the buses to have a 4 times faster loading speed. The default was extremely slow, almost to the point of being unviable. And the wood train now has the maximum amount of boards it can theoretically pick up on this route, for the reasons I talked about earlier. $2 million. Not bad. Adding that to the money it made by delivering the wood, it's not a bad little payday. Since we are not taking full advantage of the production capacity of the lumber yard, we should increase the frequency of the trains, by adding another one. That of course means signals. In case you are not familiar with the way they work in this game, they are much simpler than they are in Workers and Resources. You only need to add them to the entrances of the junctions, no need to add another one to the exits. Basically, just think of rail switches as if they have a built-in exit signal of their own. Once a train leaves the switch, the other route will become available to use for any incoming train. Anyways, time to add the next train. I got a few new wagons, so I wanted to see if they are worth using over the ones we have now, but I think I will stick to using the vanilla cars for now. That's why I didn't just clone the train. To be able to afford it, we needed to take out a bit more money from the bank, but the investment is more than worth it. With our money supply pretty much set, we can safely start thinking about building the main line. I think the first segment will go between Kensington and Harrow. We only need to deal with that farm along the way. So many stations to choose from. Let's keep it simple on this first outing. Since I have a very specific kind of station in mind, I just went with the single track version. We can add in the rest ourselves. Basically, I want to have 4 tracks in the station, but 2 of them will be just passing through, only the other 2 will be able to access the platforms. Also, maybe 160 meters isn't quite enough for what I had in mind, so I added one more segment on both ends. Wait, don't expand to this place yet. We have a station entrance to sort out. As I've said, I would like to keep this one simple. Let's just go with this plain looking station building. Yeah. This will do nicely. Let's give the front a quick leveling, so the road is guaranteed to be at the correct height. Nice, all 3 entrances are connected. I am fairly certain that most of the early stations will be drastically reworked in the future, but I do like this one. Let's give it a proper paved front, so those connections look a bit less awkward. Next, we need a second station in Harrow. The road was ever so slightly misaligned with the 2 rotation steps I could achieve. No matter, it will still look okay. It's the same 4-lane setup we did in Kensington. In case you're wondering why I don't give the 2 middle tracks a platform, those will be running the freight lines. Those guys will have their own station outside the city. Let's see which station building to use. I think I will go with one of the King's Cross side buildings. Sadly, adding the other end of that side won't fit. We can do that one somewhere else. The side that faces the platforms is a bit weird looking. That's because it needs an arch station roof to cover it. There. Not so ugly now. We can also add small details to the platforms themselves, like seating, and elevated footbridges. Nice. Now passengers can get over the tracks safely. I think this will do for this station. I will definitely need to revisit it in the future. I'm less happy with this one. There are way too many roads along the way between the cities. Technically, we don't really need them, but breaking connection between cities can result in warnings. But for industries, we can safely break those connections. We will end up rebuilding them when it comes to hooking things up to the main line anyways, so it's not a big deal. Alright, we have a clear way to place the tracks between Harrow and Kensington. Since this is a bit more permanent now, we should make sure to place tracks that can achieve speeds we are happy with. And we're out of money. Let's give it a moment, the lumber train bound to make a delivery any second. There. Those millions should tide us over for a bit longer. Also, we are only shipping 70% of what we could be picking up at the forest. I think we can safely add a third train to this line. With that sorted, let's get back to the main line. And the first leg of the main line is complete. Well, not quite, we still need to add switches and signals. The thing is, these 4-lane highways need a well laid out lane changing system. But since we are only shoving passenger trains onto it at the moment, I just give them a simple diamond, and call that good enough. At this point, I think we can erase those ugly brown textures we used to mark down the path of the main line. Next, we need a depot. I will definitely going to build a proper train yard for things like this in the future, but at this moment, we just place one randomly somewhere along the line. But I did want to showcase one of the mods I wanted to use for this. It's quite a beauty. It even has built-in passing tracks. Really nicely made stuff. And now it's time to start placing signals, making sure to force trains to drive on the left. I am pretty much guaranteed to mess this up in the future. I am way too used to building things that drive on the right. Technically, we don't need the signals at the station exits. The stations themselves also act as signals, only releasing trains if the path is clear. I will get rid of the superfluous ones later. But looking at the path the lines take, I think it looks correct. And here's the big moment, our first train on the main line. I think the Class 43 is the way to go for this. We also have many different passenger cars to choose from. Let's try to find one that matches the color scheme. Five cars is way more than what we need right now. But I'm sure it will grow into it eventually. Also, having a locomotive at both ends is massive overkill. But hey, the lumber train can easily finance these kinds of cosmetic investments. And there she is. The first train of the main line. Hey, dude. What are you reading? Shouldn't you be paying attention to the train you're driving? I know reading is food for the imagination, but maybe don't go as far as reading imaginary books, okay? Anyways, I didn't notice yet, but the front locomotive has the wrong color scheme. I will fix that later. Next, to take full advantage of this line, we need to sort out the local mass transit. The station only has a certain range, so we need buses to bring people in from every corner of the city. For now I just called the train line Intercity 1. I'm sure I will give it a better name later. Okay, this is a bit wonky. Let's fix it by switching which side of the road the bus stop is on. There we go. A nice little bus route. How about we go for the RATP logos on the buses this time? For the Harrow buses, I just went with 182. That's the one I took home when I was working for Amazon as a seasonal helper during a Christmas period. The coach dropped us off at Harrow bus station, so I took the 182 back to Sudbury. For Kensington, we basically need to do the same. Place some stops around the city, make sure at least one is in range of the station, and that way people can access the intercity train from all parts of town. I really didn't want to build another depot. If we replace the country road we deleted earlier, we can just use the Harrow one. Let's buy the go-ahead buses this time. For Kensington, I just went with 360. Whenever I visited the place, I always went by tube, so I just picked one randomly, that just happens to drive across the borough. In terms of finances, we are doing pretty good. The new intercity line is obviously a huge money sink right now, but that is to be expected in these early days. Good thing the different freight lines more than make up for the difference. Might as well sort out some of the roads I hastily disconnected earlier. Since we don't have any warnings anymore, it's not necessary, but it makes me feel better. For this one, something a bit more modern is in order. This will do just fine. Yep, I have no complaints. Since this depot has many entrances, it might be better if we connect all of them. That way, we don't need to be careful which icon we click on if we want to buy more trains in the future. Don't worry, this really is temporary. I would love to spend some time working on the scenery too, not just the functionality sometime. Since we still had some time left on the episode, and we were doing so great, I decided to go for it, and connect up a third city to the main line. How about we do Wembley? It already has a local bus line, so we don't have to worry about that at least. Since Wembley Park Station is a pretty modern looking place, I decided to go for that kind of aesthetic. In hindsight, Maybe I should have placed the second set of stairs right next to the other. That would have been a bit more symmetrical. Yeah, this is another one of those stations that will end up being rebuilt in the future. For now, we just need it to be functional. Aesthetics can come later. Either way, I know there are small gaps in the textures. This is something I don't know how to fix. I'm sure there's a workaround. Let's get rid of the roads that are in the way, and get to work sorting out the tracks toward Kensington. Yeah, I will definitely need to change those stairs in the station. The asymmetry is killing me. And here's the first river crossing we need to worry about. This looks high enough to let ships pass under. I really don't want to do anything flashy. A plain-looking girder bridge will do the job perfectly well. I think we are past the age of the suspension bridges for the most part. Plus this is a pretty small river, building anything big would just look silly. Next, let's get over the lumber line. I'm not ready to shove that one onto the main line yet, so let's just build an overpass. I would prefer to not have pillars on this one if I can help it. That's the ticket. Exactly what I wanted. And we can just build the remaining segment in one go. That will ensure a nice gentle descent from the height of the bridge. Let's take care of the rest of the line. Wait, what is this station doing here? Oh, right. I wanted to use it to deliver tools to Kensington. To kick that lumber line into high gear, we really need to start delivering the end products, so I'll keep this around as a reminder. I was so preoccupied with building the main line, that I completely forgot about this. To ensure a gentle enough turn coming out of the station, we need to sacrifice some of the farm fields. Thankfully, destroying them has no effect on the productivity of the actual industry. Plus, I do plan on replacing those fields with custom ones later anyway, so it was bound to happen sooner or later. Very nice. Things are coming together way better than I expected. Choo-choo indeed. Yeah, we don't need these signals, the station is more than capable of deciding if the path is clear or not. And with all that done, we just need to add Wembley to the line. And it seems the game was smart enough to use the correct platforms in Kensington. Anyway, that is pretty much what we had time for today. I think we did alright. There are small things I'm not happy with, like the stairs in the Wembley station. Speaking of which, I did try to see if Wembley Stadium is available on the workshop or not. It is not. While I don't like football, it is still a pretty big landmark, and I am kind of sad that I won't be able to include it. But I did download St. Paul's Cathedral since the last episode. Which means that Westminster in the middle will very likely going to be renamed to the City of London, that weird semi-autonomous company town in the middle of the metropolis. That's where most of the famous skyscrapers are located, along the cathedral, so it makes sense to call it the right name. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, then leaving a like and subscribing to the channel just might motivate me to make more. If you are more in the donating mood, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page in the description, where you can buy me a glass of water. I don't really drink coffee. Thank you for your support, and until next time, I will see you later.